Stephen King is obviously best known for his work within the horror genre, but the popular author has actually written several novels and short stories that don't adhere to this style at all, switching things up completely. One of these books is The Stand, a post-apocalyptic adventure that follows a group of survivors that have banded together into factions after a weaponized influenza destroyed the rest of human civilization. It's one of King's best non-horror stories, though it does include some scary scenes to keep tensions high. The Stand is widely regarded as one of Stephen King's best books, though it's not the typical kind of story that the author is known for. It doesn't include the supernatural hauntings, demonic creatures, or looming atmosphere of his usual horrors, but that's arguably why it works so well. Everything is tonally different, and that keeps the reader on edge from start to finish. However, Stephen King often comes under fire for not allowing his books' endings to quite live up to the stakes that he creates in the middle, and The Stand is no different. The ending of The Stand is underwhelming after Stephen King's setup. He sets the ending up so well, but fails to fully deliver. The main problem with The Stand's ending is that it's fairly abrupt and doesn't quite resolve all the tension that has been gradually building up since the first page. King always does a great job of asking fascinating questions and getting the audience curious about his well-written mysteries, but he's not always able to pull all the threads together in the final few pages. The Stand suffers from the same problem, as he asks countless questions throughout the story that are either never answered or simply dismissed as something the reader literally never could have figured out. The Stand is famously connected to King's Dark Tower series, and many fans have been able to explain certain aspects of the former's ending, such as the Blue Lightning and Flag's potential resurrection, using evidence from that series, but that's not how a standalone novel should be resolved. Additionally, the entire ending of the book is a deus ex machina, that is, a literary device that seemingly comes out of nowhere, without explanation, and fixes everything. It's an unsatisfying way for such a complex novel to end. Stephen King should have traded The Stand's ending for a sequel story. There was plenty of room for this great story to continue. Stephen King's The Stand, Gary Sinise's Stew. However, if Stephen King was struggling to bring The Stand to a fulfilling ending, the author could have easily continued the story into a sequel. The reason that The Stand's ending feels so rushed and empty is that there's so much material left over that simply never gets resolved. This should have been a clear sign that there's still room for this story to expand and breathe, rather than forcing it into an undeserved end. There was no need for Stephen King to make The Stand's ending so final and definitive. The author is usually great at keeping concepts open-ended so that he can return to them in the future, but he clearly had no intentions of that here. Perhaps he'd already mapped out Randall Flagg's journey in the Dark Tower and wanted to shift his focus there instead, but even without Flagg, there's still an entire post-apocalyptic world that could have been explored in a sequel. Why a sequel to The Stand would work so well? It's one of Stephen King's biggest missed opportunities. Matt Frewer as Trashcan Man in the 1994 miniseries of The Stand. The reason a sequel to The Stand would have been such a smart idea is because of how thematically rich and socially relevant the original is. There's so much going on, from King's astute observations on the nature of humanity, the inherent battle between good and evil, and the order of natural selection, that it seems like such a waste to confine it to a single story. The Stand 2 could have included a sizable time jump to avoid any narrative repercussions on the original's ending, flicking to the future and exploring how this dystopian society has evolved and changed from the one under Flagg's control. Stephen King famously struggles with endings, and the reason is that he's so ambitious as a writer. It's both his biggest strength and his greatest flaw. It allows him to forge incredible stories packed full of ideas, just like The Stand, but his unadulterated creativity makes it difficult to pull all these fascinating concepts together in the end.